Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Larry McIntosh, and I'll be your host for the next hour every Saturday morning from 8 to 9. Thanks for tuning in. My guest this morning is the Honorable Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship. Good morning, Minister McIntosh.
Hey, good morning, Larry.
How are you today?
It's great to be here. Sort of a Mackintosh and Mackintosh thing we're doing.
Yeah, it's going to be odd because if people listen to the show, I know you're a regular listener as well. You know I mess people's names up, but if I messed your name up, what excuse could I possibly have?
Well, it'd be worse if you messed your name up, right? Okay, there's only one worse. So
it has happened on occasion. So we're going to talk about lots of things over the next hour, but the big news, been in the news Wednesday and Thursday this week, is zebra mussels.
Yeah.
So what's happening with that?
Well, the threat was looming outside of Manitoba to the east and south of us. So many waterways in Minnesota have been infested over the last number of years. The Great Lakes became infested in just 5 short years. We understand that the female zebra mussel can produce about 1 million eggs in just one season.
Oh, wow.
So it really has a devastating impact on fisheries, certain fish populations. It can make the bad algae worse. It can certainly clog up pipes and really make the maintenance of your boats very difficult. And it also can be a real threat to beaches. When you look at Grand Beach, for example, one of the great beaches of North America, we sure don't want to see people cutting their feet on zebra mussels, the broken shells on the beach, and have to smell the rotting zebra mussels. So there's a huge risk that we have to now take on in Manitoba once they were discovered in the late fall. So the last 6 months or so have been very challenging for our science staff. They had to determine the extent of the infestation in Manitoba. It's at a very early stage, and there's a low density of infestation so far, they have concluded. That could change, of course. And they also started to look at the science as to how can we contain, or in fact, can we even eradicate zebra mussels at this stage here in Lake Winnipeg. We came to the conclusion that we had to pull together some of the great scientific minds when it comes to aquatic invasive species and zebra mussels, and so we put together a science advisory group. There was expertise from University of Guelph, for example, and International Institute for Sustainable Development, the federal government that has a lot of expertise, as well as our own water scientists. And they found that there had been an experiment very successfully done in Virginia a number of years ago, applying potash to a waterway. And at that time, it was a quarry. It was a contained waterway. They unanimously determined that we should really try it here, that if we did it right and we contained the 4 harbors, that we could be successful. So we have a fighting chance here in Manitoba. There is certainly no certainty. The only certainty is if we don't take action, things will definitely get worse. So now it's really a challenge of working with those that rely on Lake Winnipeg, especially the commercial fishing industry that is so important. And that's why we're making an investment of $500,000 on this eradication program. But we have to work with them to ensure that they can continue to fish during the period of treatment. The period of treatment could take 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to stage it in different harbors. At the same time, we want to make sure that everyone can access their boats and get out fishing, albeit we'll have to find different docking facilities. So we've been having discussions about that. So we've got about 4 weeks or so to nail that down. We're still, by the way, in a period of waiting for federal approval on this one, and there's a minor provincial approval as well. But we have to really get moving on engaging people that are affected. So we want to minimize any inconvenience. And also we have to remind people, though, that even with some inconvenience, this is a very important investment in the long-term economy of Lake Winnipeg and the lake's well-being and our ability to enjoy it and the fish. So this is not an easy subject. It has been a subject, of course, unfortunately, in so many jurisdictions south and east of us, and it has taught us lessons that we have to learn from. But invasive species are becoming even more common, not just aquatic invasive species. There are a number of plant species as well that are becoming more common across North America. The Asian carp is another one. But this is an example of how when you introduce an invasive species, a foreign species, it can change the whole ecosystem. The feeding that takes place in the lake changes and can impact on our fishing success. So this is an investment in what will hopefully be a long-term reduction, minimization, hopefully an eradication. But we're going to try something that's never been tried on an open lake in the world before.
I was just going to ask that. This has been tried elsewhere, but this is not a small pond of water we're talking about here.
No, and the only way it can be done is by curtaining off these harbors. So that's why we have to deal with and minimize any inconvenience. But when you are presented with science unanimously, I think we would be negligent to turn a blind eye and just continue on. At the same time, we have to ramp up our prevention efforts. We have to remind people when it comes to boating, the old lines: clean, drain, dry, dispose. So we're going to be increasing those efforts as well.
So this is a species that's come in on boats. Is that what we assume? How it got to the lakes?
Yeah, we've invested about $500,000 over the last 5 years in prevention activity, and in fact, Manitoba has been a Canadian leader in prevention work. There's been investments by the Fish Enhancement Fund, for example, in decontamination units that we just deployed this spring. And they've been working at the borders, for example. We also have an awareness campaign, and we've had vigilance, a surveillance effort as well to determine if there are any eggs that are coming down the Red River, because the Red River Basin does have zebra mussels south of the border. So it was a bit of a surprise, I would say, but the risk was looming, as I said at the outset.
We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. We're back with Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship, and we talked about zebra mussels, and that's taken up a lot of your week. So let's talk about something else. When we're looking at the website, and your portfolio, I think that's the right word, is huge. Like, I was just reading here. So climate and green initiatives, fire protection, First Nations, fishery branch, forestry branch, lands, parks and nature areas branch, pollution prevention, protected areas initiative, water, wildlife. Holy mackerel!
Oh, it's a great and wide learning experience, and of course, I don't have a lot of time to learn on a lot of these issues. But zebra mussels, for example, is where we had to learn very fast. But when you look at the challenges and the opportunities, it's really, I've just been so blessed. We really have put an emphasis on Lake Winnipeg and on climate change, for example. There are some species that really have to have special attention paid to them in Manitoba, whether, for example, this week we talked about caribou conservation, and we introduced Canada's strongest effort to make sure that we steward that threatened species, that we work with industry like our forestry sector and Tolko, and making sure we have the right balance, because we have so many great opportunities in northern Manitoba. We need jobs, economic development up there, and we have to make sure we get it right so that we can sustain those jobs. And in fact, I say that when we sustain the environment, we sustain jobs. We have to proceed in sync. So the caribou was a good example of how we have to have sustainable development in Manitoba. The polar bear is a tremendous icon for this province, in addition to the caribou, and we've got some great opportunities there to expand on. And of course, the Journey to Churchill exhibit that will open very soon is going to be world-class. It'll be an international destination along with the Canadian Museum. At the same time, we have Churchill, Manitoba, the polar bear capital of the world. So we have launched consultations on a new provincial park called Polar Bear Park. We want to make sure that we better alert the world to the opportunities to see the wildlife up there. The polar bear is one, but as well the beluga. I don't think Manitobans really think of Manitoba as a coastal province, but we have belugas on our coastline up there, and just as we know that we can have greater economic opportunities in the north if we operate in sync with nature, we can have greater shipping opportunities, and climate change will facilitate that, unfortunately, I will say, though. But we've got to make sure, again, that we respect the beluga population and movement on Hudson Bay. So those are all some of the areas that we've been addressing. And I think an area, though, that means a lot to individual Manitobans is the park strategy that we unveiled. There are a lot of initiatives there to modernize our provincial parks and make sure that the experience is really enjoyed by Manitobans. I think we have a really good sense of ownership of our parks, Larry.
Mm-hmm. And just talking about Churchill, Shelley and I were fortunate enough to go up to see the Bears 5 or 6 years ago. And what amazed me is that we were on the tundra, on the train, right on the tundra that's taken out there in the wintertime, saw the Bears going by, but not many Manitobans, I think we were the first Manitobans ever to say, they said on that particular tundra. It's right in our backyard, so to speak. It's a ways north, obviously, but it's fantastic. And Shelley and I were fortunate enough to be at the ALS fundraiser 3 or 4 weeks ago now, bid on a Churchill trip to go see the beluga whale. So we're going to be doing that this summer.
Wow, so this is great.
Yeah.
I understand there are opportunities to actually swim with those whales. So I don't know, Larry, if you're going to be out there.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing that or not.
Okay,
I don't want to, I don't think so.
Well, they're a beautiful animal, and we're going to learn a lot more about it because we're developing this conservation strategy for belugas. But Churchill is a very special place on this planet, and we've got to make sure that we have those cultural and sustainable tourism opportunities that are better known to the world, and make sure that we get that balance again right when people go to Churchill.
And as a province, the majority of our population's in the south, right? I mean, there's lots of communities up north, but we have it's such a diverse province when you consider we have deserts in part of the province, and you go up to the tundra and Churchill, and it's an amazing area. That a lot of that area is in your jurisdiction, I guess, for conservation.
Well, I go a long ways back. My mom and dad were from Manitoba, and I know those places, and I've done a lot of traveling, and we were a camping family as the kids were growing up. But since I've come into this portfolio, I've seen Manitoba like never before, and I'm so proud of this province, and I'm so amazed at the vistas and the opportunities that exist here. The fly fishing opportunities that we have to celebrate more in western Manitoba, for example. The Pembina Valley, one of the most gorgeous places in the province, and the people that help to preserve it. I see real heroes out there, people that I hope we can better celebrate going forward. So this is truly a diverse province. We often think that this is a prairie province. We call ourselves a prairie province, but 70 to 80% of our land base is actually boreal. And of course, the boreal is gorgeous. And I come from the boreal. I was born and raised in boreal country, and I love it. I think that there's a special draw for people that grew up in the boreal to go back. I think that's where you can rejuvenate, and you get a good sense of place. You're reminded how small you are, and yet some of your values. And so for me, it was always a special place. So to be out there in this portfolio and seeing the lay of the land like I've never seen before is really an honor and a blessing.
We'll be right back with Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. We're back with Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship. See, I was rushing. Minister, it's now time for a recipe segment called Now We're Cooking. So let's see if you like this. Now, you don't need to write this recipe down. It's today's recipe of the day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Sun. So you can either get the newspaper today and get all the information or go to our website. So today's recipe is Kahlua pumpkin cake. Kahlua pumpkin cake. You like Kahlua or pumpkins? Which is it?
What a combination.
What a combination.
Am I going to admit to... Okay.
Okay, so here's what you need for the recipe. 1 package of spice cake mix without the pudding, 2 cups of cooked mashed pumpkin, 1 small envelope of whipped topping mix, 4 eggs, 1/4 cup of water, and then for the glaze, you need 1.5 cups of icing sugar, 1/4 cup of butter that's melted, and 2 tablespoons of Kahlua. So combine the cake mix and the pumpkin in a mixing bowl, then beat at low speed until the cake mix is moistened. Increase the speed to medium, adding the eggs one at a time and beating well after each addition. Add the water and whipped topping mix and beat for about 2 minutes. Pour the batter into a 13 by 9 baking dish and then bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes or until baked through, and cool in a pan for about 10 minutes. Remove and place on a serving plate. And then for the glaze, combine the icing sugar, the butter, and the Kahlua and blend until smooth. Allow the cake to cool slightly and drizzle with Kahlua glaze, and this recipe serves 8. Again, this is today's recipe of the day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Sun, and it's got pumpkins and Kahlua. So
I think it's going to bring Thanksgivings to a whole new level.
I think, it should do well. And of course, to keep with the Canadian tradition, all the recipes on our website or in the on the newspaper, both metric and imperial. I tend to do the old-fashioned way. But we'll be right back with Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. We're back with Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to. Do you know when Manitoba Day is?
Well, I'll just take I'll take a shot at it. It's May 12th.
It's May 12th, exactly. So I've been mentioning on the show for the last couple of weeks because it's one of my pet peeves is that, we don't take enough time in this country or our province to celebrate how fortunate we are, what a great place we live. We talk about the challenges, which every place has challenges. We'll talk about potholes this time of year and mosquitoes when the summer comes, but we live in a wonderful place. So I know you know this, but I'm going to remind our listeners and viewers, the Manitoba Act, which created the province of Manitoba, received royal assent on May 12, 1870, making it Canada's 5th province. And this act created the province of Manitoba, which was officially incorporated in Canadian Confederation on July 15th. Manitoba's official flag was dedicated and raised for the first time on May 12, 1966. And as you know, in 1986, May 12th was designated Manitoba Day. Now, this is where I come in. We wondered how many Manitobans could say that Manitoba Day is May 12th, because it's not a holiday, right? People can tend to remember Victoria Day because there's holidays. So Peak of the Market hired Prairie Research Associates to conduct a survey in February this year of Manitobans over 18 years of age. We asked one question: when is Manitoba Day? The results: out of 814 Manitobans surveyed, only 33 people knew that Manitoba Day was May 12th. That's 4% of the people. So despite it being around for 28 years, we have to get out there and talk more about our great province.
Sounds like we're going to have to wrap up the awareness efforts here and some celebrations. I know that there are some efforts that are made for that day, and but I think there's a lot more we can do in terms of celebrating who we are. For example, we've just been working on designating a Manitoba fish, an official fish.
Really?
Other provinces have an official fish, and states have an official fish. So we had a nomination process for that, and we're just about ready to launch. Let Manitobans know what the fish will be. But
so you can't tell us right now?
Oh, I'll just leave you hanging, Larry. But stay tuned.
It's not the Gold Eye. I know it's a baseball team. Anyway, we won't put you on the spot.
By the way, there were some very deeply felt views, a lot of debates, and I saw some of those debates erupt in the circles I've been traveling in over the last year, and it was a lot of fun, and I think we got a lot of school kids that were alerted more to the great variety of fish that are in Manitoba. But here's a trivia matter for you. We think, I'm sure all of us believe, that the bison is our official mammal, our official animal. But in fact, it has never officially been designated as such. So perhaps we should get around to that someday.
We don't have an official animal at this point?
We even have an official soil. We have an official bird. We have an official tree.
The soil surprises me. The other one's okay.
Yeah.
Really? So now we're going to get a fish soon?
We're going to get a fish very soon.
But we don't have any kind of animal or mammal?
So we should deal with that.
It's on everything we do.
Yeah.
How can that
So,
be?
I mean, we can't overstate it. It's kind of fun, but it does help to define who we are as a province, because we are different. We are unique. We have our special attributes. And one thing I'm reminded of when I do go on travels for conferences and that, I'm reminded about other jurisdictions. They can be warmer in winter and so on, but we have this wonderful dry summer by and large and dry winter. And I think it's really special. I think we should do more to celebrate winters in Manitoba. It's an adventure. It's a memory walking down the street with your, the snow crunching under you. There's so many activities that we can uniquely do. And I think that we should stop apologizing or just making fun of the cold weather and the snow and start to promote it. Adventure tourism is the biggest growing area of tourism in the world. People want experiences of life. Quebec has done a pretty good job at that. And our Festival de Voyageurs, I think, is a great example that we can build on.
And there's so much in our province, including the Human Rights Museum that's opening up this September. There's so much to celebrate in our province. But back to your climate issue for a minute. I'm from Toronto originally. I'd much rather have minus 30 in Winnipeg on a sunny day, Manitoba on a sunny day, than minus 10 in Toronto where it's that damp and it goes into gets into you. And I'd much rather have a sunny day in Manitoba. And that's why I live here, obviously. But I find it very hard where it's really damp and it gets into you. So I agree. We should celebrate more of the things we have. Manitoba Day. Next year will be 145 years. I'm getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't hit 144. Well, you and I should say right now, we're going to celebrate something for 145 years. That's pretty special.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, well, you're not going to commit anything?
Well, we'll work it through.
$12 million? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So let's talk about you. Now, you've been in politics for a lot of years. I think 6 times you've been elected?
Well, it's been 20 years this past fall. We had a little roast, and everyone had some fun at my expense. I can't understand how the time has gone so fast. It is such a compelling calling. The time goes by, and I have these issues that arise, and sometimes you say, "Oh, I'll never forget this day." And a week later, you can't remember what the issue was that was so extraordinary. But 20 years has gone by in a flash. I could be convinced it was maybe 7 or 8 years. But I can't believe in my life I've had this opportunity. So it's been great. My neighborhood has been wonderful to me to keep sending me back. And I pledged to work hard. And my family's been very supportive. Of course, that means everything. That has to come first. And your health. And vegetables, eh?
There you go, vegetables. There you go.
Very, very good, eh? I worked that right in.
Perfect. Yeah. So where are you from originally? Manitoba, I assume?
I was born and raised in Fort Frances, Ontario.
Oh, in Ontario, okay.
Yeah. My mom was from a homestead near Rorton, Manitoba, a place called Abbott's Hall, actually. And there's just really a schoolhouse and the Inkster home across the road. It's north of St. Rose. And she spent also some time growing up in St. James, and her dad was a carpenter. And after the war, they got the homestead. And then my dad grew up in Selkirk, Manitoba, and Winnipeg. They lived in St. James and Vaughan Street. But by and large, the growing up was in Selkirk, Manitoba, where my grandfather taught carpentry shop. So my parents met at Ninette, like a lot of parents in Manitoba have. They both contracted TB. And Dad was in there for about 10 years. He had gone to be a teller in the Royal Bank on his graduation from grade 8, actually, at Selkirk in Maine. And then got work with a financing company here. But he ended up in the Sand for 10 years, and Mom ended up there for a couple of years. She was in training at Dauphin General Hospital for her registered nurse program, and then contracted it from a patient, she believes. Mm-hmm. But they fell in love, and it was never thought that they would ever have children, let alone 3. So I was the junior of 3 of us. And when Dad got out of the Sand, unexpectedly, he got work. He knew Art Chipman here, and got work with the Chipman and Borger families in Fort Frances managing a peat moss company. This was back in the 1940s, and at that time this was kind of a leading edge sector that was just coming into its own here in North America. So that's how we ended up there, and that's beautiful country as well. It's fishing country, hunting country, and it was right on the Minnesota border, so I got to understand some of the differences between Canadians and Americans on a first-hand basis. So deep roots in Manitoba, and a town that I love, Fort Frances.
We'll be right back with Gord Mackintosh, the Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. We're back with Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship. Now, Minister, we kind of sprung this on you today, but we're now taping the show that will air on MyToba.ca. So the radio show, you and I talking here, they can go to MyToba.ca and just click it's My Life area, and you'll actually see us there talking, but also you'll see the visual of it.
Multimedia.
It's, MyManitoba.ca. Food and Friends TV is what we're going to call it.
That's great, Larry.
So, yeah, so if you watch this show, because it airs on the Sunday basically after the show airs, but after they do go back to the studio, and Tech Vox doing this for us, which is great. But if you'd watch the show, when you do watch the show, you'll see in the first segment my mic is kind of fading, and you're just talking because I was losing my mic. So you don't see that on radio, but if you watch it on MyToba.ca, you'd see that. So we were talking off air that your father passed away at a very young age for you.
Well, tuberculosis, they say, can have an effect like a thread giving out over time. So he passed away when I was 2. And so Mom, and Mom also had a disability as a result of her tuberculosis, and that was challenging for her. But she raised the 3 kids in Fort Frances, and the town was very supportive. I remember one time I got a job in the paper mill, but when I applied, they asked if I had ever had any medical issues that could affect my employment. Well, I'd had a brain hemorrhage, actually, just a year or 2 earlier. So I'd written that down. The personnel officer, the fellow, wonderful guy, he said, "Is there another way to express that? Because there are people watching these things, and so we ended up with broken blood vessel."
Oh, really?
so I was hired. So I think that might have been one of those examples where people, looked out for the family. But it was a great town to grow up in, and I see a lot of Fort Frances folks around Winnipeg, and it's always great to run into them. But then university comes along, and if you were interested in pursuing post-secondary studies, you would go down east or to Thunder Bay or to Winnipeg. So I went initially to Ryerson for radio and television arts, actually.
Oh, really?
Larry. So can I ask you some questions? And that didn't quite appeal to me. I was really getting into political studies. I had a great teacher in grade 13, Mr. Allison. I was taken by politics, and of course Mom was very keen on the whole thing too. She was a great old CCFer, a lot of respect for Tommy Douglas, and actually for all politicians that were working hard for people. So I had that at the breakfast table, and then I had the experience at school. So I got into the study of politics at the University of Manitoba, and one thing led to another, and I've had some great experiences, some great jobs with Canadian and the Manitoba Human Rights Commission. I was the deputy clerk of the legislature. And then I went back to law school. I can't believe that all came together like that. I didn't have a lot going for me, I think, earlier on, but it happened, and I worked hard, and I worked with a great firm, Thompson, Dorfman, Sweatman, and had some great clients. I was able to work with Elijah during Meech Lake. I was his advisor. That was a life-changing experience, and working with senior lawyers like Alan Scarth, I got involved in environmental work. We acted for a couple of ranchers in southern Saskatchewan that were trying to stop the flooding of their land for the Alameda Dam. And then as things rolled along, and we found a house in the North End, which, by the way, reminded me a lot of Fort Frances. Is the variety of the cultural differences and the age differences on the street, and it was just such a friendly, wonderful, welcoming place that we fit into. And it all turned out that a nomination came open when Judy Washilis resigned her provincial seat to run federally.
Right.
And so some neighbors encouraged us, our family, to think about it, and we took that on. And a remarkable 20 years ago. Yeah.
And any regrets? Would you change anything?
Oh, it's just been fantastic.
Yeah.
I just think that the efforts that people put in on our behalf publicly sometimes aren't recognized. I think in that legislature there's a lot of partisanship. People think that we're always fighting. In fact, we agree on the majority of matters in the Legislative Assembly, but there are some wonderful people that are in our legislature from all parties, and I've met some great people. I've met some great volunteers. I think over the years, I'm particularly struck by those that have fought against violence against children. Those that have fought for victims of crime, that have gathered the strength after horrendous loss, overcoming grief to help others is really a testament to the human spirit. I've met so many survivors of violence that it is inspiring. In family services, of course, it's foster parents, amazing heroes. Imagine opening your heart and your home to a child, and I came to know so many of them. And now in conservation, it's these efforts that people put in. for preservation of special areas or special species that really have to be celebrated. So it's been a great gift, and as I say, you work hard to make sure that you vindicate the trust that people put in you from the neighborhood.
And I would say we meet at charity events quite often.
Yes,
You're at dinners
it's
or
great
at.
to see you there always with your wife, Larry.
And we enjoy seeing you. You're a very positive person. At least my relations, all the time we've met, you've been very positive, and that's cool. And that's got to be difficult, because at times you're going to be, as a politician, you're going to be criticized no matter what you do. Whether you do this or do that, you're going to be criticized. So I admire people that put themselves out there in this leadership role. So I want to thank you, and I think anybody at any level and any party should be thanked for what they do for our country and our province and our city. So thank you very much. We'll be right back with Gord Mackintosh after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. My guest today is Gord Mackintosh, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship. Now, this is our last segment. This hour's flown by. I have to say that you're fascinating to talk to.
Well, it's been really fast, Larry, but I wanted to say on air, though, but you have a demeanor about you, I think, that is relaxing, and hope it brings out some of the best in people that come on the show. I think so. I've heard the show a few times, and I really appreciate, too, that when it comes to the political people you have on here, that you're able to talk about their background and perhaps what drives them and what's motivated or inspired them. I think it's very good for Manitobans to know that their political representatives are not one-dimensional, that they come from different experiences of life, and they all have a lot to offer in perhaps different ways, and should all be celebrated.
We'll have to have you back another time and talk about Mackintoshes, because there's got to be somewhere.
I'm into that. The roots thing I'm big on.
There's got to be somewhere in there our paths cross, our families. I know we spell our name differently, but still, the most common. I get stopped in public and they say, "Hey, you're that Gord Mackintosh guy." So they think me. I don't know why we get confused.
I'd like it if you got my bills.
Thank you, Mister, for being on Food and Friends.
You're welcome, Larry.
Next week, Don Peterkin, Chief Operations Officer at the Assiniboine Park Conservatory, will be our guest, and we look forward to hearing about the zoo and everything that's happening out there. Thanks to Nicole Bonnekamp, our show's producer, and take care, and please don't forget to eat your veggies.